This is how to evict bad tenants. My name's Daniel Hale. I'm a real estate agent that works with a ton of investors, and I have also managed hundreds of rental properties, so I can help you guys deal with these situations. Let's be honest, it's not fun to deal with, but first I want you to take a deep breath because everything is going to be okay. And if you are a real estate investor, this will happen in Ontario from time to time. But if you get bad tenants in Ontario, you have to take the appropriate steps to evict that tenant. Now, there's many reasons as to why you might need to do this. Maybe that tenant is not paying you rent. If that is the case, at the time of this video, it's going to take you about 4 to 5 months to get a landlord and tenant board hearing. Now, if you go the distance, I'm talking all the way to a landlord and tenant board hearing, all the way to the sheriff, you're looking at around 6 months. Now this does change depending on how many people are filing to the board, but at the time of this video, we're getting hearing dates for non-payment of rent within 4 months. So if the tenant is not paying you rent, you're going to want to serve them with an N4 notice of eviction, and then you are going to want to wait the 14-day period to see if they pay you. If they do not pay you, you then have the right to serve the L1 to the landlord and tenant board. Now, try not to freak out every single day. I know it sucks, but the only people that can evict the tenant in Ontario is the landlord and tenant board. So when you're evicting the tenant for non-payment of rent, it's very important that you serve the N4 correctly to the tenant and you file the notice to the landlord and tenant board correctly. Because it takes 4 to 5 months to get a hearing, if you do this wrong, you're gonna go all the way to the hearing and they're gonna throw it in the garbage and you're gonna have to start all over again. I've seen this happen so many times and it drives me crazy because you lose a lot of time and a lot of money. So make sure you do this correctly or hire somebody that can help you do it correctly. Now we're talking about bad tenants here. So I'm gonna go ahead and assume maybe they're damaging the property, maybe they're not paying rent, maybe they're causing a lot of stress and a lot of headache for you. So the next case that could be one of your scenarios is the N5. The N5 is filing against the tenant for damages, interference, all sorts of things that the tenant should not be doing. Now that's another notice that you can serve the tenant and file to the landlord and tenant board to make sure that you get an eviction. Now, maybe the tenant is paying you rent, but it's consistently late. I'm talking 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe a couple days, and you need that money because your bills arrive at a certain time and you need that money. You can serve the tenant with an N8, which is a notice for consistently late payments. You can go to the landlord and tenant board and you can request what's called a pay on time order, where that tenant pays you on the exact date that they're supposed to, that's on the lease, and you can have this for about a 1-year period where they cannot miss any of those days. And if they do, you can file for eviction, non-payment of rent, or rent being paid late. Now the next option is the N12 notice of eviction. Maybe you want to move into the property for your own personal use, one of your children want to move into the property for their own personal use, or one of your parents. You can do this, but it's important for you to know, you must hold on to the property for a period of up to 1 year. If you use this form, the tenant moves out, you rent it out for a lot more money, or you sell the house, or you don't move in like you said you were gonna do, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble, so I don't recommend doing that. Please don't. The tenant will file against you for an unlawful eviction. But if you need the property for any of those reasons, you can serve them an N12 with 60 days notice, and that 60 days starts from the time that they pay rent. And then you're also gonna wanna make sure that you serve the N12 correctly to the tenant. Everything is filled out correctly, their names, your name, the address. All of these forms need to be served to the tenant correctly. You can serve it by mail, and if you do, you need to make sure that you have enough time, about 5 to 6 days before they pay rent, so that you can prove that it was delivered on time. You can slide it under their door, you can drop it in their mail. If you do any of these things, take a picture, take a video, have it for your records. You need to make sure you serve the tenant correctly, otherwise, like I said, these notices get thrown in the garbage. Now after you serve the N12, you can then file the L2 to the landlord and tenant board. Now for N12s right now at the time of this video, we're seeing hearing dates around a 5-month period. Still not good, but it's better. Now the next thing that you can do, which a lot of landlords do this in Ontario, I'm not saying it's the best option, but it does work. A lot of people hate it, they can't stand it, but it's called cash for keys. You pay the tenant a certain amount of money that you guys agree upon for the keys and vacant possession. Now if you do this, you want to make sure that that tenant signs an N11 notice to end the tenancy. That way, if they do not leave, you can file that notice to the landlord and tenant board for an eviction. Now, this number will vary. You got to ask yourself, how long has the tenant been at the property? How much money are they paying in rent? Is it way below market value? How much are their expenses going to be to move? All of these things, the tenant might throw a crazy number at you, but try to negotiate with them. And if they accept the cash for keys, you guys can do an N11 notice and you can get your property back. Now, if they sign that N11 and they agree to cash for keys, you can rent out your property after, you can sell it vacant, you can do whatever you want. But if you have a bad tenant that's not paying you rent, that's damaging your property, that's doing any of these things, you're probably not going to do cash for keys or want to do cash for keys, and you won't even need to because you have multiple other avenues that you can take to evict this tenant. So go that direction. There's no need to give them cash for keys if they're not paying you rent, or they're not paying rent on time, or they're damaging your property, and you can evict them without putting out more money out of your own pocket. Now, if you need help solving any of these problems, just shoot me an email, send me a text, or give me a call, and I'll put you in contact with one of the paralegals on our team to help solve your problem for you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.